Welcome to Table Talks. Everyone's favorite, I know, especially this table. I'm really excited about this one. So last week, what happened? He answered some questions. He started answering the questions. So questions at daylightchurch.com. Send your questions here all the time. This is always running. We're doing a series kind of through the year, on and off. We'll do different questions of this. So last week, he knocked this one out. No, he didn't. He knocked this one out. Totally answered it right? Absolutely. Right? So before I start on the next piece of this, let's start with you. If you get to eat any meal one last time, any meal you've had, do your full courses, right? Do your appetizer and your meal and your dessert, right? Because sometimes dessert's the best part. What's the meal you get to eat? What's the last meal? What's your meal going to be? 1, 2, 3, go. Talk to each other. Tell each other all these wonderful things. All right, softball question over. Time for a real one. You ready? So I need everybody to grab a pen, which is behind you, in your chair, and a sticky note. Looking back at your life. Some of us, that's a longer time than others. Looking back at your life, what event changed the trajectory of your life? Looking back at your life, what event changed the trajectory of your life? Event or events, right? Something happened that changed the trajectory of your life. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write it down first. On your sticky note, write it down, because we're going to need that for later. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to write them down, and I want you to start talking about them at your table. If you feel comfortable, share it at your table. If not, no big deal. This is part of what we're going to do today. So we'll cue the music. We'll give them some thinking music. So I'll give you a couple minutes to write it down, and a couple minutes to talk amongst each other for us. So. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so you've got your sticky note. Keep that, we're going to need that later. All right? So last week we talked about this question. Shameless plug for Wednesday night. We had Q&A on Wednesday night. We talked about this even more. Right? Shameless plug. Awesome group on Wednesday night. We talked about whatever goes on the sermon on Sunday. So if you missed this, go back and watch it. I'm not doing it again. Even though there was a verse that said the guy sounds really smart until the next person comes along and he sounds really smart. So I was going to be that really smart guy, but no. But this question came up off of it. So based on all that stuff we talked about last week, should we still read the Old Testament? Do we still read the Old Testament? Because there's a lot of discussion around me, not just at that group, but other times of like, well, then we'll just read the New Testament. Or I don't do the Old Testament anymore. I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore. I've heard it a lot, right? There was a prominent preacher a few years ago who said, unhitch yourself from the Old Testament and just go forward with the New. Right, so this is not a new question, right? This is totally legit. So what I'm going to talk about this week is I'm going to give you a couple of reasons to read it. A couple of reasons to stay with it. A couple of reasons to not throw it all away. Also let you know, like, we're doing this as a church, right? Our Thursday night is Daniel, which is in the Old Testament. And if you come to our youth group, probably about half the time we're talking about something from the Old Testament. We're talking about Jacob and Esau stealing the blessing from each other over a meal of stew. We're talking about the coat of many colors, like all these stories we're talking about, and that's all Old Testament stuff. So, point number one, I think you read the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament. So, we talked about last week kind of how things progressed through, right? The culture was growing and evolving. God was changing and evolving with it, right? Like it seemed like that. But it's just as we were learning more, we were knowing more about him, and we could see him more fully. So I want to start with, I'm going to use one example of a story. So on the Bibles on your table, I have two passages marked, one in Genesis, one in Revelation. So we're going to talk about Genesis 12, 1 through 5. So if you have a digital version, you can pop that up, or if you want to just open the Bible to that. I do the digital version, so I can just pop to it. Okay, the call of Abram. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and bless you. I'll make your name great and you'll be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And all peoples on the earth will be blessed through you." So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old and he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, the people they acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Verse 7, the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. So a lot of people talk about this being the start of everything, right? The big three promises that he gives to Abram. Make you a great nation, give you the land you see, and through you the entire world will be blessed. And sometimes people will add the bless you, those who bless you, curse those who curse you. That could also be in number one but you got the big three. Make you a great nation, give you the land you see, and through you the entire world will be blessed. So here's what I want you to do. In your brain, we all see the lens backwards, right? I want you to pretend that you're Abram. There's no scriptures. There's no place for this God that's talking to you. There's nothing. This God appears to you and says this to you. What does that mean? This is one of my favorite movies. Anyone not seen this movie? Okay, spoiler alert, right? You've only got... So if you just watch that, what'd you see? Don't take the end of the movie. At that point in the movie, what do you see? Husband apologizing. Okay. She's ignoring him. Right? Up to that point, that's what you think is what's happening. You can't unsee it once you've seen it. Right? If you know the twist. What's the twist? He's dead. It's been like 30 years. If you haven't seen this movie by now. Well, that is true, sorry. We won't call you uncultured. We'll just say you're young. So does that change the rest of the movie? Now, here's the thing. When I saw that movie the first time, and that twist hit, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to watch it again. Immediately, I wanted to watch it again. Immediately. Because it changes the entire movie. Such an amazing twist. Right? When you watch it the second time, you're watching it through the lens of what? Of him being dead. Right? So the second time you're like, duh. Of course, right? She's not ignoring him. He's dead. He's not there. So this is the way I think, like this is a thing in my brain, how you can look at the Old Testament and the New, right? Abram has no idea what this means. Now we read it, we can say, look, duh, it's Jesus. Duh. Through the entire world to be blessed, like that's Jesus. What are you seeing, Abram? He's not seeing anything because he doesn't know that part. All he knows is a God has reached out to him and said, and I'm saying a God on purpose, right? Because in that culture, there were gods everywhere. So a God has reached out to him and said, I will give you these things if you pick up and leave where you are and go there. Does that make the story different? No, it doesn't. And yes, it does. It doesn't make the story any different because Abram still had to have the faith to get up and go, regardless of what the answers were. But it makes the story different because now we're watching it in hindsight. That of course he would get up and go. He's Abram. If you look at the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament, you see a bunch of different things. We take for granted those things because we're on this side of it. You have to remember how all those, like stuff we talked about last week, we're seeing it from this side. So we have to acknowledge that, we have to stay with that, and we have to figure out what God is trying to tell us, what trying to tell them then, what's he trying to tell them now. Because what you see is you see the story come up over and over and over again later in the New Testament with this light shined backwards. So in Acts, a lot of the proofs that the apostles give, they start here and say, remember your father Abraham, and they start telling the story. Remember your father Abraham. This is what this means. And either changed their mind and they started following Jesus, or they didn't and they said, we're not, like, it's not Jesus. We don't believe that. You're trying to ruin the temple, all these things, right? Jesus looks back in the road to Emmaus in Luke 24. Jesus, after he rose again, is walking along with two of his disciples walking along the road, right? What does he do in that talk? They said, oh, it's over. Jesus is dead. We thought he was the one. Oh, he's dead. Like it's over. We're just sadly going home. Jesus said, do you not read the prophets? Do you not read the stuff? Like all this stuff that's in the Old Testament that we call it? The prophets all told you that this was going to happen. So he starts explaining it to them. They're like, oh, that's amazing. He is the Messiah. Right? If you watch it through the lens of the cross, the lens of Jesus, the prophets make sense. The choices make sense. The direction makes sense. If you read it in blocks on its own, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So number one, reading the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament. Number two, it's part of the grand story. So look at your story that you wrote, look at your moment you wrote down on your paper. Like physically look at it. Look at it. If you're telling your story to someone else, like you did, right? Do you start at that place and go forward? Where do you start? You start before there, right? Because that was the moment that changed everything. Am I right? So this is what I did before, and then I met her. And my whole world changed. Right? You don't just start with, I met this girl, and this is what we do. It's not the same, right? The Bible is this grand story of God creating everything, humans messing it up, God doing everything he can do to get us to come back to him, to the point that he himself came and said, be like this, live like this, died for us, rose again, and in the end, he'll make it all new. You can't just start at Jesus and move on, because you don't know the other stuff. You can't read Matthew without knowing the Jewish faith, because he's talking about kings, and he's talking about lions, and he's talking about all these messiahs, these things, right? You have to go back and pick it up from some of the earlier things. Unlike Star Wars, you can watch 4, 5, and 6 and never watch 1, 2, and 3. I'm just saying. Revelation 21 is the other thing marked in your Bible. So we're going to turn there. Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them, and he will be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eye. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. He said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. You can't appreciate that until you've seen the pain and the hurt and the tears. If you just start with heaven, you don't know the backstory. And if you just start with Jesus, you don't know the backstory. Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them, they will be his people. And God himself will be with them, and he will be their God. There's all this searching and crying out. In Egypt, they were crying out because they were in slavery. But if you look back, they were in Egypt and became a country because they were protected by Egypt. But then they cried out and God moved them. Then they cried out and God took care of them. Then they cried out and God took care of them. And then the earth cries out and Jesus comes to take care of us. You have to remember the old to appreciate the new. When you also look at the whole story, you're looking at promises kept, right? When Jesus is talking to the guys at Emmaus, He's saying, this is what the prophet said. This is what the prophet said. This is what the prophet said. When the apostles are telling their story to the Jews, they're saying, this is what was said. Look, it's Jesus. All these things you've been searching for and promised are here. It's also evil being dealt with. At the end, everything's done. All the evil is dealt with. There's no more tears. There's no more crying. There's no more pain. God is here. We're all living together. As Donald told us on Wednesday, just boringly living together. Because no one's fighting, no one's doing anything, right? It's way more than that, right? But you have to get in that mindset of like, there's no fighting. There's no tears. There's no crying. That means evil is done, taken care of, gone away. You start seeing that through the Old Testament. God slowly taking that away. In the New Testament, God started taking that away. Until in Revelation, it's all gone. There's this huge, grand story. The way my brain works is big picture down to little. So my youth get a lot of this big picture story. Where does this fit in there? When we talk about Jonah, right? Jonah would not go to Nineveh, which is the evil enemy city. He would not go to them. Why? Because he knew God would save them. He knew God would save them, so he didn't want to go. These are his enemies, right? God's getting rid of evil by changing it. We see glimpses along the way. We see Jesus coming and saying, anybody can come now. Behold, I am making all things new. All the evil is gone. God is with us in presence. And all his promises are kept. But you have to use the whole story to get to there. You can't just pick and choose. You have to tell the whole story. Because all those mistakes that people made before, we make them every day. They're walking in the desert, and they don't even have to change their shoes. But they complain about everything else. What do? We complain about everything. We're in the Old Testament. We're in those pictures. It's us. See the whole picture. See it through the lens of Jesus. And remember, the promise is kept at the end. All things are made new. All the evil is gone. And we're hanging out with God, doing awesome things.